Hi there, this is Mark Brunet with CubeBrush, and in this chapter we're going to be doing the UVs. So another exciting part. so that's not true. UVs can be fun sometimes, towards the end mostly. So what I have been doing so far. So I have now, from the previous chapter, we have our basically our topology finalized. So now's the time to actually unwrap everything and get ready for bakes. So what I'll be doing first is save this as a different file. So I had my no, actually not yet. What we're going to be doing now is just deleting. Oh yeah, I'm actually saving it as a different file. So we're gonna save that as a different file called whatever your file name is, and then UVs at the end, to remind us that this is the UV file if we ever need to get back to it, because we will. This is going to be like the file that has that is basically the final file. What we're going to be doing here is we're going to be creating all the UVs and then also getting rid of everything that we don't need to UV twice. So that means, all the pieces that are double, we need to get rid of those. If there's symmetry somewhere, we're gonna get rid of that too. So in this case, I'm gonna get the face is gonna be unwrapped without symmetry, but the neck and the breast, they can all be symmetrical, because there's not gonna be anything there that needs special shadow or anything different. Basically the two breasts are the same with the neck. So I can mirror that, and mirroring down the middle there, not a problem if we're just doing hand painted and diffuse only. But if you're gonna have a normal map, for example, it's always a bad idea to split down the middle, because you'll get some seam that will be visible in some like extreme lighting or angle in most engines. So normally you don't want to maybe like cut it on the sides or something like that, or simply not have symmetry, or simply not have symmetry at all on your character if the only option you have is to cut it down the middle. So now that we've basically gotten rid of all the extra pieces, now is the time to kind of lay out everything. So I just do I select everything and I do just a frontal projection, and you can see here I also found an extra face there that sneaked in somehow. So yeah, always good with the UVs to find the final mistakes. And so I'm gonna put the pieces here that I haven't deleted, but I will kind of need later. So I haven't deleted them because their position is kind of important, so I didn't want to have to reposition them again. But what I'll be doing basically is everything that's double there that I want to keep the position of, I'm gonna put it in a corner where I'm not gonna be bothered by them, and then later I'll be sort of transferring the UVs from the other pieces, the original pieces, onto them, so that they both share the same UVs. So right now what I want to do is kind of just lay everything out nicely, so like in all their different pieces basically. So what I generally start with are the biggest pieces, because those are going to be the ones that take the most space on the UV sheet, and they're generally the pieces where all the other pieces are going to have to sort of work around and position themselves around them. So so in this case it's going to be the bodysuit, obviously, and just because it's one piece in the mesh doesn't mean it has to be one piece in the UVs. In this case, since I don't have that many pieces, I'll probably want to cut that up into smaller chunks, so that I can better use sort of the UV sheet that I have. And yeah, so in this case it's going to be just one UV sheet. So if you had like a weapon, for example, you might want to have your weapon on a separate UV sheet and keep the character on its own. So this way maybe the character can swap weapons or something like that, and it won't affect negatively the sort of the memory. of your texture memory basically. And now that I'm starting to, planning my cuts in UVs, I'm realizing that I actually have to kind of move around verse a little bit and create new cuts so that I can get a better loop around the shoulder. So this is also, it's no problem to do that at this step. Sometimes, for the sake of the UVs, you might want to cut up your mesh a little bit more than initially intended, and that's okay. It just means that you'll get a better bake basically, and sometimes maybe you would have had like an undesirable seam if you didn't do that. And in my case here, I'm also adding an extra loop around the shoulder because I didn't have enough subdivision. So I was thinking that if I ever have to pose this, which I will do at some point probably, if I ever pose it and the arms are in like a more extreme position, like not a relaxed position, then I might have some issues if I don't have enough subdivisions there. So for for UVs, I really like Maya because it's very simple to use, and there's only a few tools I will be using here, and yeah, they work really well basically. So, and it's super simple, and yeah, a lot of people that I know use Roadkill with Max. Roadkill's okay, I guess. I don't know. I just prefer Maya. It's better if you have. It's better. It's easier to lay out as, basically at 100% of what you want. So you never. It's always exactly what you want. And for some reason, for me, it allows me to optimize my UV to always a little bit better. So now, yeah, split up the arm. So I added the extra edges that I needed to be able to split it off the body. And then I'm going to be doing the same thing with the legs. So now I'm trying to find a loop that goes around pretty much the entire leg. So something that I can cut along the lines of, and I think I found it. So this loop here seems pretty good. So I'm going to use that to cut it. So as you can see, I'm just clicking on the little cut icon there to cut along those edges. And then I'm going to do the same thing here. Click again. So that's basically the main tool that I use to cut apart my my UVs. So again, cut it in a bunch of different pieces. So now I can unwrap this properly. And as you can see, I just right click and do unfold. And you can also go into I guess like in the menu on top, polygons, and then it's unfold UVs. So I use the hotkey for this because it's a lot quicker. And unfold UVs is really good for most part. So there's I guess a way to use it. So the best way to use unfold UVs is to select 2 points like I'm doing now. Select 2 points at the extreme sides of your UV island, and then select everything but those 2 points, and then unfold UVs, and then that's when you'll get really nice unwraps. And sometimes, for hands or something like that, you'll want to position like the tip of the fingers where you want them, and then like another anchor somewhere else, and then select all the points, all the UVs except those points. I call them anchor points, but really there's no name for them. Like whatever you call them, whatever you want. But so yeah, you select like everything but those few anchor points that you select, and then you do the unfold, and that's kind of how you get really good results and really quick unfolds, really quick UV layouts with Maya. So as you can see, again, I'm selecting 2 points here, selecting everything else, and then doing an unfold. And sometimes it's not perfect. Like in this case, I can see, I've assigned a checker texture to my mesh to be able to tell, if my unfold is successful. Basically what you want here with this checker thing is you want all the squares all over the body to be the same size. Basically, that's what it is. So, in this case, the squares here are much too small, so I want to make that UV island a little bit bigger to match the rest. And yeah, so that's what it is. So initially, don't worry about, laying down the UVs in any particular way. Just make sure that all the squares are the same size. So place them wherever you want. You don't have to stick to one of those four squares there. You just put them wherever you want. Doesn't matter. Just make sure the squares, all the black and white squares, the checker pattern is all the same size everywhere. That's the first thing we want to do. So for the hand here, I'm gonna split it up in half. Hand's always a little bit tricky, so it's always the trickiest part to unfold, especially if you don't have that many polygons with your hands. In this case, my fairly limited. So as you can see, if I do a classic unfold, this is what you get, and it's really nasty. Obviously, it's terrible. So what I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to lay out my my kind of like anchor UVs, as I was saying. I'm going to use those to unfold. So I'm going to select everything but those anchor points that I selected, and then I do an unfold again, and you can see already that my UVs are a lot better already. So it's not perfect. Some of the distance, I mean, from my part, it was a little bit random. So now I can move them around a little bit, make sure that all the fingers unwrap in the same size. And also, of course, looking at my checker pattern on my model, making sure that all the little squares are all the same size. And when that's close, then I can make sure that there's no overlap anywhere. Overlap of UVs. So here, you want to make sure that there's some distance between the UVs, the border of the UVs. Otherwise, you'll get some artifact when you're trying to paint the textures. And so now that I know that I'll be likely doing this at 2K by 2K, what that tells you basically is the amount of space that you need to keep between the islands. So when you do your bake, you want to have some space in between. So that's why I'm creating some space between the fingers and not leaving it like flush with the other one, just so that there's some buffer there for aliasing for the pixels. So the higher your resolution, basically the less space you need to keep in between the different UV islands. But yeah, for like 1K and 2K textures, you need to keep like a couple pixels. So I'm going to be doing the same thing here with the top of the hand. Just laying those anchor UVs, and then selecting everything but those, and then there you go. Yeah, you can do it again. Make sure you get a nice result. And then what I like to do with hands is to have those as straight as possible. So let's say you want to create like some nice seams, or let's say you want to create some sort of any kind of pattern on the gloves or something like that. It's always a lot easier if everything is straight. So if you unwrap it like all fingers all apart, you'll run into some problems at some point during your life. So what I found to be the safest way is to just keep everything straight. And it just looks better too. It's cleaner UVs. And again, of course, maintaining some sort of space between the fingers. And then you select the rest, and then you can also always do like unfold. That's what I'm doing here. That's why the the UVs look like they're relaxing, but it's not a relaxed UVs that I'm using. I never use relaxed UV. All I use for UVs is unfold UVs. That's my go-to tool. And yeah, I'm gonna make sure that this is straight here. All right, it's looking good. All right, again, making sure those squares are all the same everywhere, at least on all the surfaces that we've done so far. Now the next piece is going to be the kind of skirt thing, and for this, since I have some thickness, I'm gonna be, unwrapping it completely. But sometimes, if you have like a really thin, I don't know, like a cape or a cloak or anything like that, you can always kind of do double-sided, instead of unwrapping it twice like I'm doing right now. So if it was much thinner, for example, I might unwrap it only once and have it be just like a one plane instead of have it have thickness. And this way, of course, you save some UV space. What we'll be doing for this one is match the outside. So the outside square size is going to match, but the inside is going to be a little bit lower res because it's not something we're going to be looking at too much. So again, saving a little bit of UV space here. Moving on to the boots. One thing also, while I work on the boots, one thing that's interesting that I like to do is, I've been saying to keep the checkerboard pattern pretty much the same size all over the body, but depending on the use for your model or what you're gonna do with it, or I guess the camera that is going to be used to look at it in the game. If it's a top-down camera, for example, you might want your pattern to be a little bit tighter at the top of your character if the camera is looking at the top most of the time, because basically you just want more resolution the closer it is to the camera. And also, camera aside, you'll want more resolution in the areas of interest for your character. So, generally speaking, you'll want a little bit more resolution in your face and the hair, so around the head, basically, and around the, like torso, shoulders, in that area. Everything else can be a little bit lower, and then possibly going lower and lower as, as you go down towards the feet. So this this shoe is a little bit tricky to unfold because it's kind of a complex shape, and I want to make sure that I don't have too much seam showing. So again, here I was missing one edge to facilitate my my UV, so I just added that in, no problem. And I ended up deleting it. So, whatever. So yeah, that was not magic. I just did an unfold UV once again by selecting 2 anchor points and doing the unfold on everything else. So yeah, as I mentioned, it's really the only tools I'll be using here, and maybe at some point like align verts on one axis or the other. But yeah, tool wise, really simple for UVs. And now, of course, like in this kind of you know, for feet, for example, for this shoe, um, it's easy to split it up in a bunch of different parts. That's, you know, always easier to have a bunch of parts for your piece. But what you want to try as much as possible is to have only one piece, or have as fewer pieces as possible. So what I'll be doing here is trying to combine some. So now that I've kind of unfolded them all individually, now I can see the outline for this is like, oh shit, that matches really nicely. So I can probably just merge that, and that's gonna make it easier for me when I paint my textures. Same thing with this. The outline kind of matches or does it? Let's see. Alright, so I'm like, yeah, if I split this up in the middle, maybe I can even combine this to it and end up with even fewer pieces. So that's what I ended up doing. So yeah, here I started with a bunch of pieces, and now it's actually a very, very simple unfold for the shoe, which is nice. So sometimes that's another technique. Like if you're not too sure what you're gonna do, or if you want better unfolds, it's always easier to have a bunch of pieces initially, because then it's less calculations for the computer. If you have fewer pieces that you know that don't wrap around in like a bunch of crazy ways, it's easier to compute, and then after that you can just kind of stitch them together, like I just did. So now basically my shoe is just one main piece, and then the heel, and then the, you know, under the shoe basically. So again, just making sure the square is all the same size, setting that aside, and then moving on to the next piece. And for the blades, blades super easy, and what I'm gonna do is just mirror both sides. So it's gonna be just one side that'll have texture, and that'll take care of basically all the blades. So I just had to do one side, and the two different blades are gonna be sharing the same UVs anyway. So yeah, all I have to paint is one side of the blade, and then I'll be done. So I'm just gonna make sure that I cut that in half, and then I overlay it properly. So right now what I'm doing is just I selected all the UVs, and then I'm deselecting one at a time, kind of trying to line it up with the other UVs of the you know, from the other piece. So really quickly, it doesn't have to be super clean, and all that has to match here is the outside. So what's inside doesn't really matter. So now what I'm going to be doing is just yeah, aligning them side and like horizontally and vertically, so that they match one to one, as you can see here. And yeah, I'll be done. So that's it for the blade. So a really good use of space with this. So this one's a little bit tricky because it's kind of like just one big piece, one continuous piece, and when I bake it, for sure the seams are going to be visible somewhere. So it's just a matter of deciding, you know, where is the least where are they going to be the least offenders, basically, where they're not going to be as visible, but yeah, knowing that they will be visible anyways. So in my case, I'll reiterate, it's never that big of a deal with the seams, because I'll be painting my textures in 3D coat, and it's going to be diffuse only, so you can really blend between the seams, between the UV islands, no problem with 3D coat, and it just, you can hide the UVs really easily this way. But if you were going to be using, you know, if you're going to be working on an asset that has normal maps or specular map and that kind of stuff, your placement of UVs is really critical, because you don't want them to be visible. Basically, you want to always hide them like under the arm or behind the leg, or places that most players are less likely to check, or less likely to see, to notice, because oftentimes the seams are never always impossible to hide 100%, so you always see them to some extent. But in our case, I don't really care, so that's good. But still, you know, the way I'm unwrapping it is considering that I could possibly you know, have normal map at some point. So what you're seeing here is still the best practice. I'm not being sloppy. So for things like this, you know, everything that like the little like cuff thing around the, you know, around the wrist, since it's basically a cylinder, I want to unwrap this as, you know, as clean as possible. So it's gonna look something like this. So I want to make a nice box. And what's great when you unwrap your shapes this way, you know, in a box, really straight, is that you can later on, you know, add, you know, straight lines in Photoshop, for example, and it'll be really crisp. You won't get any kind of wave or, you know, pixelating of your lines. If you do a straight line in one way or the other direction, it's gonna be super crisp. And also it helps if you know, if your high poly has those lines that kind of follow those UVs too. So for this particular piece, I'm gonna have one surface that's very visible, so the one that we're seeing here on the viewport, and then there's the back side completely, you know, basically completely obscured. We're likely never gonna see this unless somehow, and in some animations, like they rig this and then it can kind of like flap around. So I do want to have some sort of UV area for it, but it's going to be much smaller than the one that's like really visible. All right, well, we're getting there. So the hair is always going to be last because it's the one that I'm the most scared of. So we're going to keep it for last. Working on all the easy pieces right now. So this, yeah, the shoulder piece is just a joke to work on. Super simple. So again here, select 2 points. But before I do that, I'm gonna cut something so that I make sure that it unwraps nicely. Even possibly cutting a little bit too much, but that's fine. We can just sew it back up a little bit later, which is what we're gonna be doing. So here again, you know, this is something that's pretty symmetrical, pretty easy to kind of turn into a more of a box with the UVs, so to make sure that I don't have any waving effect when I do my bakes. And again, you know, you look at the right side and the left side, not quite the same. So I want to make sure that to align those things, and then do another unfold to make sure that everything is that I get the same kind of resolution of texture on both sides of this one asset, this one item. So straighten everything out. Again, this helps the bakes, and it just helps the texture compression later. And while you're doing this, you know, as you can see, I have my viewport always open. Sometimes there's some manual tweaks that you want to do here. Sometimes, of course, unfold UV is not going to cut it, so you want to tweak it manually. but that still should be pretty rare. And now I just sew those thing back because I could, and it just makes it easier for texturing. All right, for the head, normally what I like to do is, well, in this case it's not going to be symmetrical as I mentioned before, but still going to cut a couple things. So the usual cuts that I do before I unfold anything is cut up to the chin. So anything, you know, past the chin towards the neck, I can cut that, and that's going to open up nicely. And then of course I cut around kind of like the face mask. So you can imagine like she's got a mask that covers her whole face. I want to make sure I cut that out, because I feel if I unfold the entire head, it's never gonna give good results. So as you can see, I removed kind of like the head itself, and the head, all this part, this particular part for the head is going to be, most of it is going to be hidden under the hair, so I don't have to give it that much resolution space. So here, yeah, super simple, just an unfold, selecting two points, then unfold, and as you can see, it unfolds really nicely, like by itself, if you just select this much. So yeah, not much work to do here, so that was really quick. Ship it. I'm just making sure. I'm like, this can't be real. This was too easy. These really quick. It's pretty much flat already anyway, so not much to do here. Eyebrows. And eyeball. When you unfold eyeballs with the unfold UV thing, it's never perfect. So it's always kind of squashed in one axis more than the other one for some reason. I don't know why. Can't wait for them to fix that, but you can kind of compensate for it by, you know, moving things around a little bit and then doing some more unfolds. And now for the eye, you know, of course, the eye has a lot of details, a lot of personality, so you always want to have a little bit more resolution than everything else in the eyes. Alright, then the final part, the hair. So yeah, this one's a little bit tricky because the hair, I mean, all the different kind of strands of hair, and I want to make sure that I don't end up with a million pieces in my UV, so I want to, again, you know, keep it as simple as possible. So there's a lot of looking around and a lot of you know, fooling around and trying to look at any like angle in particular. And so yeah, this one spot, I'll stop talking and you can just either look at it and to see how I handle it, or just skip it. And yeah, I'll pick it up after we're done with this. See you in a few minutes. Alright, we did it. Now that we've gone through this nightmare and it's behind us, and now it's kind of the fun part of the UVs. So all the UVs have been laid out nicely. We made sure that they're all the same kind of like texture density throughout the character, as you know, as best as we could. And now is the time to kind of guess like a decent scale where they're all gonna fit, but it's gonna be tight, right? So that's kind of like the initial guessing game. So you know, you get more and more accurate with experience with it. But like in my case here, I think I was a little bit too conservative, so I end up having a little bit more space in the end, so I end up scaling them up a little bit more even. But yeah, so basically you don't want to change the scale of anything at this point. So all you want to do is move them around. So when you scale something, you want to scale everything up to make sure that you maintain that density that you initially had. Because otherwise what happens is that you'll have, you know, some parts of the body that will be really crisp, really high res, and then other parts will be pixelated because they'll be lower res, and you don't want that because it doesn't look too good. So by keeping the same texture density and by not scaling your UV islands after, you know, at past this point, basically, you prevent that. So the strategy behind this, because yes, there is a strategy, is to always start with the bigger pieces. So all the bigger pieces that are more complex, that are harder to kind of make work, or that are harder to place around, you know, later in the game, you want to lay those out as early as possible. So, and I just realized with this piece that I was really sloppy with the UVs. You know, if you're gonna split down the middle like this, and on such an obvious piece, you want to make sure that you have straight lines on both sides. Because that's just how it is. Alright, and now actually it's a lot better. So this piece is really important, the torso, and then of course the legs and the arms, because they have a lot. So here you see me, yeah, like scaling everything up, because I realized, oh, I'm gonna have too much space. And yeah, now it's just a matter of, it's a puzzle basically at this point. So you want to make sure that you're using as much space as possible, and by having as little space in between your islands as possible also. So it's just a matter of like placing things around, and of course, you know, you don't want just to put all the pieces around at random. You want to kind of have it make a little bit of sense for your textures. So what I like to do is have the face and the hair in one corner, and then maybe have you know, the torso and the arms in another one, and then sort of the lower body and another part, and yeah, kind of like split up your areas like this, so that, you know, if you're not gonna, because you don't have to use 3D code, right, to do the textures. You can do it all in Photoshop. It's a lot more work. It takes a lot more time, but you can. And if you lay out everything in a way that makes sense, so, you know, like, you'll know that, okay, in this area, this is, you know, everything that's head related, for example. Then yeah, it makes it a little bit easier to just organize everything. So yeah, at this point it's just trial and error. You're just moving things around, rotating things. Some things you don't want to rotate too much, like the head. I don't want to rotate this at all, so I want to make sure that it's you know, straight like this. You don't want to rotate this like on the side just to make it work. There are things that you want to keep as straight as possible. So the torso is one good example. You want to keep this from top to bottom, and not rotated, so that if you have to do some sort of gradient afterwards, you know, in the Photoshop file, then that makes it a lot easier. If you have things that are all rotated a bunch of different random ways, good luck, you know, tweaking your textures later. Just signing up for free headaches right there. So yeah, so when you're placing your pieces like this, always start with the bigger ones, and then as you go, start basically keep the smaller pieces for the end, because the smaller piece is always easier to place. Like these, I should wait and place the hands first. But yeah, what I'm realizing here is that I have too much space still. So it's not so bad, so I'll probably leave it like this, but everything could have been a little bit bigger to use that UV sheet a little bit more. So now I realize here also that I forgot to unwrap this in a rectangle like I did for the other side, and so I'm going to tweak that. Alright, and now I'm gonna try to find a place for this. Shouldn't be too hard. But yes, this is something that happens, so you'll move something and then suddenly you have to move everything else. Yeah, it really is like a puzzle. So if you like puzzles, this should be pretty cool. This should be pretty entertaining. If you hate puzzles, yeah, out of luck. Alright, we're getting there. Almost done. And something that I will realize a little bit later, but in this case, I didn't unwrap things properly for my bakes, for my textures. So a lot of things, like the arms, for example, and the torso, I'm gonna need to unwrap this without symmetry, because one side is gonna have shadows, for example, in some areas, and the other side is not gonna have shadows. So if I was using symmetry, that wouldn't work, obviously, because let's say you have one shoulder that has like casted shadow on it, the other shoulder on the other side, since it's mirrored, will also have that, and if there's nothing covering it, that makes no sense. So for my arms, for my the torso, and what else, a couple other things here and there, the hands, for example, those are all going to have to be individually unwrapped. So what I'll be doing is I'll be doing this offline so that you guys don't have to go through this again, but you get the idea. So that's how I do my UVs, basically. So now that I'm done with the UVs, I'm gonna be reassembling my mesh. So what I deleted before, I deleted all the duplicate face or everything that was symmetrical. What I'm doing now is just rebuilding my base mesh, basically. So making sure I also have my hard edges where I had them before, if they disappeared. And getting rid of any hard edges that was not there before, that we sort of made happen by merging the two different meshes. So here again, the same thing as we did before. We're gonna delete those useless faces, All right, and so now I'm transferring the UVs. So make sure those are the settings. So you can pause the video here when I was doing this to make sure that you have the right the right settings. I'm gonna be doing the same thing for all those little pieces. So these two need to have the same UVs. Done, and then make sure that whenever you do that, you clear the history after, because otherwise the one that suddenly inherited the UVs, if its parent changes, then it'll use the UVs. So whenever you do a transfer UV or any kind of transfer, make sure you freeze your history, delete your history. All right, that's looking pretty good. So one thing that I want also to mention is the reason why I'm recreating the mesh now before the bake. So the reason why I don't keep it just a half and then bake it just with the halves is because you'll get a seam if you were to bake a normal this way.